13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
Is this intro time now?
Is this intro time? You ready for it to be intro time?
Ooh, yeah.
Bill, it's intro time. I don't have any intro disco music to put on, but if I did, it'd be going on right about now.
We got bumper music for that.
Yeah, so we had on Mark Sloan tonight, an author, somebody that you found through benefit of your own on the side and wanted to interview him. But before we go there, I'm interested in knowing about your current lodging, because you seem to have a really cool digs, and you'll hear it on the show because you're out in the boonies a little bit. But tell me more, Bill. You teased me earlier.
Well, I'm in a converted 1952 Silver Eagle passenger bus. It has been modified to be a camper now. So I'm over visiting relatives, and this is where we're set up for the few weeks that we're here. And this thing is pretty neat. It's got a full-sized refrigerator. It's got a microwave. It's got a shower. It's got toilet, washer, and dryer, queen-size mattress, a couple couches, a sink. It's even got a trash compactor in it, which is
good for getting rid of the bodies. Bill, why are you stumbling?
So I'm out in the boonies. We had luckily no connection issues so far. I'm on my phone actually, and so I'm not able to use my regular microphone or my headphones or able to record. But I'm glad that we were able to get the interview in, regardless of all that. So yeah, it's been an adventure the last few weeks. Not exactly sure when this will come out, but we have been a little bit slow on the releases, but that's just because life gets in the way. Adam and I have both just been dealing with crazy situations.
Yeah, life has gotten way too synchronistic in some fashions and wonderful in all. So I will take it as an overall positive sign from the universe that things are on the flip side changing.
Yeah, and speaking of synchronicities, there was 3, 4, or 5 of them that popped up during the interview with me, just sitting here in this bus. And then, of course, some other things happening currently, which you'll hear about in the episode. But this is definitely an interview that was just full of, surprises for me, making little connections here and there. And then on top of that, Mark's, after talking to him, he's a great guy. He sells a great product, does great research. I've had personal. Well, I guess we can get into this now since it is the
intro.
You
might as well, man. So let's just prep. Mark Sloan, author, wrote two leading books. That's not the right word. Bestselling books. And 2 of the books include The Cancer Industry, Cancer, the Metabolic Disease, Unraveled, and the 6 international. What am I saying? Let me say this over, Bill, since I am eating my words. Mark's written a bunch of books. Probably his most 2 that he's known for are The Cancer Industry, Cancer, the Metabolic Disease, Unraveled. And then he also wrote a book on red light therapy, which is what relates to you, because you picked up one of his lights and ended up just having dramatic success with this. Enough that I didn't even know that you had that. I've got a coworker that I'm thinking of just dead on recommending, if not getting her one of these.
Oh, I 100% would recommend it. The product that Mark has that I've had personal experience with isn't anything to do with cancer. Thankfully, I'm not cancerous, but it is with the red light. I've been struggling with what a dermatologist has told me is eczema. So I went to the main skin dude for the allopathic system and told me that I had to rub these creams and lotions and stuff on my body for the rest of my life. And there's nothing that can be done to help me. So I didn't really like how that sounded. So I decided to, it's kind of coincided with a lot of different events at this during this time in my life. But long story short, I got a hold of one of Mark's red lights because my fiance had purchased one, and this was during the time period where her and I were just starting to talk. So his invention was kind of an impetus to. It was the subject that I used to broach a conversation with my fiance. So obviously, her and we connected, and I got to use this red light that she bought. It's the small handheld circular one. It costs I don't know, a couple $100, maybe $100. I think it's $100. And I would keep this thing on my skin. It was on my arm. I had problems on both arms, and I got pictures of this on my old phone. I should try to dig them up. But I would keep the light on there for extended periods of time. I don't think that the amount of time that I kept it on there is necessary to receive the benefits, but because it was during the COVID lockdown, working from home, I was able to sit there with the light on my skin and my chest and everything that was affected for, multiple hours. And it had a noticeably visible improvement after using it for, that extended period of time, even within the first day, 2 days for sure. Much less irritation, much less itchiness. You could see the skin healing because, from what I understand, what the red light does, it tells your cells, so on the cellular level, like how to process energy and how to be a cell, basically. So it's forcing them to act in the correct way. And this is all with using infrared and near infrared light. So you're basically, it's like a cheat code for your skin cells and for many other things too. And I just had tremendous success with it. And then that coincided along with fixing my diet, fixing my gut health. I haven't had skin issues. It's been going on a year and a half, 2 years since, my last big major outbreak. So I've just had, enormous success with it. And since we're big on sharing things with listeners on the show, like our Shungite, I had to get Mark on the show when, I started booking guests, and this interview did not disappoint, especially given the amount of synchronicities, little synchronicities. Like there's one about carrot cake in there, like little signposts like that mean a lot to me. So yeah, it's definitely one for the books, in my opinion.
I'll give you another one. Angie texted me today and said, "I want cake."
Yeah, dude, carrot cake.
And surprisingly, her favorite cake, she didn't say it in the text, but it is carrot cake.
Oh my gosh. All right. We got to turn this into a t-shirt or something. I don't know.
I'm just going to start calling you carrot cake.
Carrot cake. Yeah. Yeah. I've been using honey instead of sugar. I was going to mention that in the episode, but for baking purposes, it works fine. And then I was also thinking about doing a coconut milk whipped topping instead of cream cheese, but I have yet to experiment with that.
Yeah, I find great benefit when I drastically cut dairy from my diet.
Yeah, I've been monitoring that more or less with the cheese intake lately.
Yeah, cheese is a hard one. You actually can get opioid dumps in your system from cheese. So yeah, it's a natural narcotic inducing food. So definitely has its benefits, but yeah, it can be addicting.
Yeah.
But think about it when you eat like a large chunk of like sharp or like a real good cheese, like a real cheese. You get like a buzz afterwards.
Yeah. That explains why people in Wisconsin seem to be happy, like when it's all wintry up there all the time. Like maybe it's got something to do with it. The cheese is good up there.
It's all that cheddar,
right? So I guess that's baking tangent. Yeah, but synchronicity. Back to the interview. that's basically the story of how I ran across Mark and the impact he's had in my life, not only like on a health, like physical level, but in a roundabout way led to me meeting my soon to be my bride to be. So it's pretty neat. Just thought I'd wanted to share it with whoever is listening to this.
You'll never forget what I forgot to do.
Oh no!
Pull up the audio files.
You what?
Pull up the audio files.
Oh, I was going to say the jingle.
Yep, exactly. Oh wait, hey Bill. Hey Bill. I should have asked. Are you ready for your gratitude? Do you need a moment to gather your thoughts?
No, I don't. I think I know what it is.
It's about being happy for your surroundings. Did I get it? No.
I'm wearing a shirt with a bee on it.
Are you? And you had a bee try to get in and then you coaxed him out? You managed to get... Was it by threat? You're like, this giant bee is coming to get you.
No, I didn't. I don't know. I don't know if it was a threat or not, but I have to sleep in here, so I had to get it out of the bus.
A lot of weird double synchronicities tonight, Bill. Time for the gratitudes.
Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude. Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude.
Well, I'm pretty sure the listener can get what my gratitude is for this episode.
Oh, hold on there, Bill. I was washing you out with the sound and you were crackling up. What is your gratitude?
Oh, I was just saying that it's probably not too hard to guess from what I've talked about, but it's the red light that I was able to use from Mark's website. Like I was saying before, the thing, it works. It just works. Light, sound and light therapy. I think that is where the future of efficacious healthcare is going. Don't know if it'll be popular, but it just, I don't know. It worked for me.
I'm going to drop another synchronicity on you this week, or I should say Friday, and then today I've been looking for weeks and weeks looking for computer glasses, and I finally received them and started using them at work. And a week before that, I got a desk lamp and replaced it with a halogen bulb inside to give me a warmer tone of light. So yeah, I've been oddly at the same time working on frequencies to try to reduce migraine.
Awesome.
So yeah, same thing. You're increasing red light, and I'm trying to decrease the blue light going into my eyes. I didn't go with the super red lenses, although I did think about it.
Not rose-colored, you're not seeing everything through rose-colored lenses?
So here's an interesting thing on that. I have always preferred pink sunglasses and rose-colored sunglasses. My favorite sunglasses have always been that way, which now makes sense that I'm filtering out blue light naturally for something that's more comfortable for my eyes. And it also makes sense about, liking, I like the pink and the bright, colors like that. So yeah, it kind of makes sense that, those bright poppy, that color is just naturally something I've wanted to surround myself with. Even as I'm looking at my mic here, the tape that I use to hold on my pop filter is a neon pink gaffer tape.
Wow. Yeah, dude, see, your body already knew like what it needed to try to reduce your migraines. Like our intuition, if we just take a second and stop and listen, I think that our bodies just tell us what they need, what it needs. That's just my opinion.
There is a podcast. There's an episode of Radiolab from many years ago that's very much in line of this idea of frequency being very important. And it was on rats in a lab. And essentially they were able to, breed rats that could get Alzheimer's. And then they decided that they were going to modify jellyfish DNA so that, because they can luminesce. I think I could be getting the details on this wrong, but the overall story is the flavor is strong here. But they would be able to control outside of the brain these cells so that they would pulse in a certain pattern. And they wanted to do this because they found in Alzheimer's patients, if you measure the frequency of the brain, you get this gamma wave goes away. This frequency disappears. And they said, okay, well, instead of trying to cure the disease, what if we just try to bring this frequency back in? Like you said, the cheating the system on the skin. So they started pulsating this in there. Boom, it turns on a system inside the brain that starts automatically clearing out plaques inside of the brain for Alzheimer's. And wow, this is amazing. And it's something that they had to reapply every 24 hours for it to have a continual effect. Then they decided to take it a step further, and they said, hey, during all this, what if we go ahead and instead of just, doing all this work to get the cells directly into the brain to be flashing so that whether the neurons or the brain matter, is able to see this, and then it brings it in step and frequency. Instead of doing that, what if we just pulsate a frequency of light in the room with the rats? And then they did that, and boom, you get the same effects, but you have to do this every 24 hours in order to keep up the effects. It doesn't completely cure it, but it turns on the system inside that starts naturally clearing things away. And it was just absolutely fascinating because my brain goes to, okay, well, what about all the flickering lights and LEDs and all that radiation that's coming in? Can that have effects on us in the same way? And as an ancillary to this whole story, what was amazing is they also showed that you could take these rats and you would put them in situations where when they had the Alzheimer's, they would walk into a room with a specific type of texture floor in which they would get shocked. And so it would be a bad experience. But while they had the Alzheimer's, they wouldn't remember it. But then you would take them and you would do this therapy on them. And they would walk across. They'd immediately get tense because obviously, with the way they conducted the experiment, they're reacting to anticipating some sort of punishment or negative experience. Showing that what's even weirder is that when you're in these states, you're still recording memory. It's not that it's lost. So even with Alzheimer's and these things, if there was a way to use frequency to reverse or conditions to reverse, the cognitive ability, thoughts, and memories are still there. Anyways, it's a great episode. It's called Bringing Gamma Back. It's Radiolab. Support your local podcast. Podcasting 2.0. Use a Podcast 2.0 supported app.
Yeah, sound and light frequencies. It's all information. That's what fiber optics, internet. I mean, it's all information used by light. And I think I said that it's telling it. You're telling your skin on a cellular level. I think it's actually the DNA that it's changing. There's some switch.
What I love about this too is it brings a connection back to the sun too. And we know that the sun goes through chemical changes and frequency changes. Right now we're having, a much higher spectrum of white lights coming through, an increase in helium production in the surface. So it is fascinating that there could be these direct connections. We already live in the frequency of the sun, this, giant magnetic field, and our brains operate in that same frequency. So yeah, it's really cool when you kind of see science saying, hey, there is, there's a frequency, a balance, and a way for things to harmonize together. And, when they get unharmonized, out of balance, you've got to find those ways in. And look, everything is frequency on a base level. Why shouldn't it scale up?
Yeah. Frequency information, in balance. Yeah. Nature always finds, it's like water. Water always finds its level.
Life finds a way. Nature finds a way. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's my big, this is my big plug for the red light therapy. If that's something you think that could help you out, listener, go ahead, check it out. You won't be disappointed. So what was your gratitude this evening?
I was going to use just, that's a tough one. I want to say having the cognizant ability to understand frequency and get, my migraine reducing glasses, or at least they're tuned at a frequency that's to cut, blue light in the spectrum, most frequency found in, monitor LEDs and fluorescent lighting. But I haven't really seen an effect from that yet. It's been so short term. But I will say I am grateful for information. So I'm stating this wrong, but I am grateful that even though we live in a world where technology can cause a lot of ills by changing our environment, intoxifying it in a multitude of ways, that even within that we come together and there's people who use that same technology to combat and improve and game the system. And I think that's really important because as we progress forward, if these things are put forward as being super, super important, that means that eventually we can leave behind the negative and toxic nature of those other things and keep the good, super beneficial things that really super amp us up, whether it's just in like red light frequency, like, hey, that's really cool. Now, if we can return to a more natural state and natural environment and use that, well, wow, what are we doing? Let's follow that technology. Let's make it so that, we're not looking to live forever through medicine and a pill and making money off the back end. We're looking to live forever because we want to be, completely in line and healthy and in tuned. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's really cool that even within all the turmoil and chaos that there's people, finding ways to benefit above it.
Yeah, it's kind of one of the things that Mark touched on with courage, not to shamelessly plug our own show or toot our own horn or anything, but if you think that what we're doing here at 13 Questions is beneficial information that needs to be, passed on and preserved or shared, time, talent, treasure. Find some way to get involved, whether that's monetarily or, guest suggestions or submitting your own interviews. But we have a unique opportunity, it seems, right now to really shape the future of media and what that's going to look like. Because I don't think that what the mainstream's got going on right now with cable news and everything, I think that's falling apart and it's going to be replaced by something. And it'd be nice. It'd be cool if we could have a positive impact that way. So any support is much appreciated, and help be a part of the magic.
Yeah, do the best you can in the world. Tend the garden around you. Support the show. Tell your friends. Time, talent, treasure. Send your suggestions, questions, thoughts, concerns, anything. We are here because of you. Oh, yeah. Also, check out the Discord. You can always get a hold of us on there. And we have a bunch of social media links. They're all there in the show notes, as well as everything from Mark Sloan, links to his books as well. And, of course, everything for our website. And if you want to help support the show, keep the lights on, and help keep us growing, we cannot thank you enough for that. All right. This is 13 Questions with Mark Sloan. Mark, welcome to 13 Questions. You ready to get this started?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I got the red light on, ready to answer some questions, have some fun.
Nice. What is the best advice ever given to you, and would you modify it at all today?
The best advice that I've ever gotten actually came from my buddy Greg. He's a year older than me, so he's got a lot of wisdom. And this was about 10 years ago. Me and my buddy Ben and Greg were hanging out, just having some beers, just hanging with the boys, chatting it up. And one of the things he said has stayed with me since, and it really made an impact on my life. And what he said was this: in business, either you're organized or you fail. And when he said that, it kind of catalyzed, it had me starting to question. I already had my own business at the time, wasn't making a lot of money with it though. And it kind of made me rethink the way I do things. And I was thinking, if he's right, then that means my organization, my level of organization is, or my level of success is dependent on how organized I am. Like, what a revolutionary concept. So I started kind of playing around with it. I'd always been kind of an organized guy. I've always loved organizing my room. When I was a kid, for example, I always noticed that I feel better when things are organized and I know where everything is. And I also learned that, like, if you have a lot of things and you don't know what you have, if you've forgotten what you have, AKA are disorganized, then there's really no point in even having it. So I think that's one of the reasons why you need to have tools that are useful and know where they are at all times. I think that's probably the mechanism behind why it's so important to be organized. And so I've kind of ran with that, and I proved it to be true. And then ever since then, I've been striving to become more and more organized at all times. And to be honest, I think life itself is the same thing. So that's part of your question here, is that how would you modify that today? I realized that there's no difference really, at least for me, between business and in life, in a sense, because I have my own business. So anyone who has their own business, there is definitely an overlap there. So I would modify that to even say, in business and in life, either you're organized or you fail. So I think this applies to, like, cleaning your house, keeping your house tidy, as well as it does to any online business, keeping records and knowing where everything is that you have, all your tools. And that's made a big impact on my life.
Yeah, I like that. I kind of like it being, also a natural thing. It kind of reminds me of just in nature, whether it's a bird nest or an ant colony, you need to have some sort of organization that is, repetitable or repeatable, repetitiously done. And yeah, I kind of like how you can flow that into other aspects of your life. So what other tools can you bring in to, improve the things that you do?
Absolutely. And I kind of realized that that's kind of all life is. It's kind of like making a mess and then cleaning it up. And when the mess is made, that's when you're moving forward, and cleaning it up, that's like breathing back in and getting ready to make more progress. That's what the organization part is for me. Once I make progress, for example, write a book and get it out there, then I need to look at my notes. What other information do I have? Where do I want to go next? That's what the organization is, whether it's in your mind and planning your next steps, or organizing the environment around you. And amazingly, there's really, I don't think, any difference. It's kind of like reflection, your inner mind, the environment around you, and how you keep it organized or not. So really organizing your physical surroundings and your physical environment will actually change your inner environment and allow you to move forward more. So it's kind of this constant flux in life of making a mess and cleaning it up.
Yeah. What's the difference between carbon and a diamond? How the atoms are arranged.
Yeah, there must be something to the feng shui, the whole feng shui thing then. And then it also kind of reminds me of old Jordan Peterson saying, clean your room. But
yeah, absolutely. That kind of rang a bell as well.
Right. Or even the hermetic as above, so below, as within, so without. And if your outside world's organized, so will your business world be organized, or your personal life. Right on.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you choose to ignore?
What do I choose to ignore? I choose to ignore almost everything, especially things coming from the screen, whether that's TV or anything mainstream, government, so-called news. These things are, I believe, after 36 years of living, put out there to keep you in constant fear and to prevent you from doing anything meaningful, and to kind of scare you into, I don't know if submission's the right word, but apathy and not doing anything with yourself. If you're always afraid, you're not really going to access the resources necessary to better your situation. So everything on the news. I always ignore that, although it's becoming harder to do that. But yeah, I do my best, and this is pretty new to me. I used to probably be the most so-called informed on alternative so-called news. I would be right up in there I would often publish other people's articles on so-called news on what the latest alternative news is. But ultimately I realized I feel like there's a mainstream in this world, and there's a mainstream alternative, and then there's the truth, which are very separate in very separate places. And they want you to stick to the mainstream or the mainstream alternative. And I've always been one to stick to the mainstream alternative until I kind of realized these are like breadcrumbs put out there on purpose to distract you and to steal your time and your attention and your thought. And I realized that these are getting in the way of me accomplishing my dreams and the things I want to accomplish. So it was only within the last couple of years that I completely rejected all mainstream ideas and not all mainstream alternative news as well. And in doing so, I've increased my productivity and happiness to a great degree because there's a lot less fear that's inside of me and stopping me from doing the things I want to do. So I ignore almost everything. And I think that's one of the secrets to life, learning how to say no and yes to the right things.
I like it. At the very least, you're avoiding a giant mind cage that controls so many people out there. You know, they buy or ingest so much of the news that it just becomes a reality that influences them where, you know, not having it is kind of an inoculation.
Yeah, absolutely. When you put a lot of work into your mind and learning how to think and actually, doing thinking yourself instead of letting the world dictate your own thoughts, it becomes like almost an act of self-hate to even ingest any news whatsoever, because that's one person's view that may not even be true. And since we have no way of knowing if it's true or not, there's really no point in even wasting even an ounce of energy on it. So I'm very passionate against, or I'm very particular about what I let in. Let's say that.
Yeah, I think of thoughts like food. So the information that I'm consuming, I'm literally consuming into my mind. So I want to make sure that, it's in line with how I want to think and move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the best things that I do actually let in are, I would say, I download all the YouTube videos onto like a hard drive. I call it the Digital Library of Alexandria. And it's all practical things, all skills that I might want in life in order to produce all the things I need to survive. Anyway, so I download these. I don't watch them on YouTube because then the recommended videos, you get all of a sudden you get off track. You go to watch a video on how to build a shed, and all of a sudden you're watching like chainsaw accidents compilations or something. So by downloading them, I avoid that. And I go into watching videos with a very particular purpose, and it's all in a folder, no distractions, no possible way I can get off track. So that's kind of how I digest the information these days.
Yeah, I like that stopgap. It's a good one.
Yeah, it gives you a chance to be selective about what you're letting into your mind, too. So Earl Nightingale gave this metaphor that the brain is like a farm field. You can plant anything in it and it'll grow. It doesn't care what you plant. So whatever you put in your brain, whether it's thoughts of fear or self-doubt or whatever, those are going to grow. And if those thoughts are coming from media sources, because I've even experienced this recently too, Mark, I've cut out. I've never really paid attention too much to mainstream media, but I've definitely cut that out 100%. And then it's even bled into alternative news and media. I used to spend so much time on Discord and all these other different sites looking at whatnot. And recently, I've let all that go, and I've basically just been doing social media for the show. My mental state's been, greatly improved because of that.
Oh, awesome. You ever notice, like, one of the phenomena I noticed just over the past, 15 years or paying close attention to this world is that, like, there's always a date to be worried about. They always come out with a new date you have to worry about maybe 1-2 months in advance. And it always comes and goes. This has happened literally dozens of times. And it just got to a point where I was like, all right, I'm done with this. I'm not even like, don't even send me these things. I have some friends that like to send that. And I honestly think it's like some kind of drug. Like the fear, it's really powerful. I've had some some emails that friends have sent me where it's like, oh, the husband of a politician just tweeted this, and it was like they're going to go into martial law and the military is going to be on the streets near Ottawa, which is right where I live. And I remember just being flooded with stress and just overcome with fear. And I was like, okay, you know what? I didn't want to see this. If it's going to happen, there's nothing I can do about it. So why worry about it? Yet I'm overwhelmed with emotion right now because it's a terrifying thought. And then all of a sudden it came and went. I think that was December 2020, and nothing happened. So I mean, what a waste of energy and life that could have been spent in better ways, you know? So at that point, I was like, I actually reached out to my friends. I'm like, whoever sent this, I don't want any of this in my life ever again. Please don't send me any dates, any kind of things that will potentially be world changing or world ending. No Armageddon style emails again. So I've laid down the law with that one. And that was like really the moment where I'm like, all right, I'm done 100% with this stuff.
Yeah, it's getting tricky because you talked about the dates. Like some of those could be like dates for catastrophes or whatever, but the other ones are supposed to be like good events that are supposed to take place and change things for the better. And like you were saying, those never come to pass either. And I like to call that hope porn instead of fear porn. It puts the brain in the same loop, you know, of that addicting thought or whatever it is, right? And then you're stuck there, and then you're let down. So,
man, well said. I never really thought of it that way, but that's very true. And I think philosophically, if we are to reject the things that bring fear, I think we also must reject the things that give us potentially false hopes. And the only hope, really, I think, is in us. If we want to change our life and we're not satisfied with where we're at, you know, we've got to take the actions. No one's going to come along. We can't depend on anyone else to come along and save us. That's kind of always the bait that they dangle in front of us with the media and the alternative media. So ultimately, yeah, I think rejecting the fear porn as well as the hope porn, like the Q stuff, for example, I think that's both important. Not to let that sway you in either way.
Yeah. Bingo. Bingo bango, as Darren might say.
What book has been most influential on your life and why?
I think the book that has been most influential to me is the one that I spent the most time with. And that is, you know, ones that I've written myself. So I don't know if the audience knows. I'm going to assume they don't. Unless you read the bio that I provided you, I'm going to assume you're going to do that. So they will know that when I was 12 years old, my mom died of cancer. And about 15 years later, after being absolutely destroyed, I kind of realized when I opened up to people and told them that, and you know, shared that story with me and acted vulnerably by sharing my greatest tragedy, it always resulted in like these amazing conversations. I'm like, this is like a golden ticket after a while, I realized. And I'm like, what am I going to, like, I can get people's attention with this and connect with them deeply in meaningful ways. That's a great responsibility, I realized. And I have the potential to do great good with that. And I was like, what do I want to do with this? And so I was thinking about it. At that point, I'd been researching for around 15 years. I was really good at it. I was like, how about this cancer thing? It took out my mom. The cancer industry is making $126 billion a year as of 2019. That's likely greater now. They're not going to give us answers. If answers are dependent on them shutting their business down, that would be foolish for us to expect that. Doctors are too busy pretending poison pills and knives are medicine to have the time to research to find the answers if they're out there. There's a lot of great scientists. I realized I saw some inklings of solutions to this disease and understanding what it actually is in the scientific research. I was realized there's a lot of really good science out there. It's not profitable, and therefore it's not publicized widely by the mainstream, that people need to know about. And I was thinking maybe it's already been solved. So I was like, okay, if it's already been, that was my hypothesis going in, that it already has. And I was like, if there are answers out there, they will be found. And I'm committed to writing a book on cancer, to read directly from the scientific literature, to find out what is already known and not known about it, to try and solve this disease once and for all. So that actually turned out to be 2 books. The first one is called The Cancer Industry. The second one is called Cancer, the Metabolic Disease Unraveled. They're both on Amazon right now, both bestsellers. And those two books, I think, were the most influential on my life because I really figured out what was going on. And the cancer industry book, it was my attempt to answer the question, are people dying of cancer, or is it the surgery, chemotherapy, and radiotherapy that are killing them? Because I know from my mother, when she was diagnosed, there was no evidence that she was sick from the outside. She just seemed like, it was my mother. She was in like just my normal mother. She didn't appear sick whatsoever. No symptoms, nothing. And then all of a sudden she got chemotherapy and it was like she was hit by a truck. And then all of a sudden she died a few months later, a few horrifyingly painful months later, might I add. And so, yeah, I mean, I wanted to find out what most people don't even ask. And that is, did my mother actually die of cancer or was she murdered for profit? And ultimately, in that first book, I realized that indeed, it's been known since at least 1969 scientifically from the work of Dr. Hardin B. Jones that cancer treatments are killing people faster than they would have died without doing anything at all. But in fact, it goes way beyond that. Like Hippocrates, for example, he was alive at in 460 BC, he was born. That's almost 2,500 years ago. And he said, it is better not to apply any treatment in cases of occult cancer, for if treated, the patients die quickly. But if treated, they hold out for a long time. So it's been known for about 2,500 years that these so-called treatments we're still using today, every single day, are killing people faster than they would have died with no treatment whatsoever. So that's what I proved with the book. Overwhelmingly, the evidence is clear that people are not being helped by these, and that my mother was murdered for profit by an industry that cares more about making money than saving lives. And then the second book, I was looking at, what is cancer? What is a cancer cell? What is a tumor? Because once you understand that, the physiology of what's happening in the body of a person with cancer, one, it becomes clear why knives are not medicine. And then two, it becomes clear also a sane and rational approach for treating the disease. So I really got down to business with that in the second book, and it's a very satisfying result as far as what cancer isn't, that we're told it is, what cancer actually is, and the most efficient ways to reverse the root cause of the problem. So I think writing those books, spending 3 years of my life writing them and getting to know that information and weaving it together in a very, I would say, artistic and easy to understand way, that's why those two books, my books on cancer, have been the most influential to me.
That's a great answer. I don't think we've ever had a guest reference their own work as their favorite book, but it makes completely sense, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because of your work. And just, I don't know, serendipitously, another word for that, synchronistically, I'm kind of observing the same situation with someone close in my life battling with cancer and chemo, and then your red light too. I know we haven't really talked about that, but I've had success using your red light too on my own skin conditions. So I just wanted to say that check out the books, listeners. If you haven't, definitely check out the red light too. And I guess this could be a life. It's certainly life-changing information. Could be life-saving. So there you have it.
If I were to ask your best friend, what is the one thing that they would say you need to work on the most, and why?
Probably visit them more. I just moved last year from Kitchener to up near Ottawa, which is around 5 hours away. And he lives in Sarnia, which is 2 hours from Kitchener. So we're talking like a 6.5 hour spread now. It was already kind of far with the 2.5 hours, although in retrospect, that was a lot less. That'd be nice to have that distance versus 6.5. But no, he would want me to visit more. But I think one of the things that I could work on more actually is improving my sleep, of all things. Ever since like high school, I think since the computer entered my life, it's always been kind of a distraction from sleep. I don't know why. The screen, there's something about it that kind of, it's like a time vacuum. All of a sudden you're on there and the hours just fly by, as we all know. And for me, that's how it's always been, like very late nights where I wish I went to bed earlier. And I look down, it's like 11, 12, 1 when I want to go to bed around 10. So that's always been a struggle for me. And it's funny though, the way that the screen works, it's almost like you don't even realize the time's lost. And so once you gain that back and you gain consciousness of how much time you're losing, um, then it becomes pretty, you see the potential in improving your life, I guess. So for me, I'm working on improving my sleep. And I think I've always had around maybe 7 hours a night, probably on average for most of my life. I think back in high school, it might have been even less. But I think around now it is about 7 hours. And I'm working on getting 9 now. So basically now I hop into bed, even if it's like 11 or 12, and I just set my alarm for like 9 hours later now. That's how I'm starting to do it. And I've noticed some big changes already. Lots of reductions in stress, and just it seems like more self-control. So I'm really liking this experiment. Sleep is the one thing that I can improve in my life, and I'm working on that now.
Are you going to do anything with lucid dreaming or dream work at all?
It's a good question. When I remember when I was 12 years old, I would lucid dream, and I would also non-lucid dream quite often. And all of a sudden, it just stopped. I don't know if it was the trauma of losing my mom or just coincidence that at that time it was kind of battered out of me, perhaps. Maybe it was just school and society. I think that's kind of the purpose of school, make everyone the same and prevent people from dreaming and creating dreams. Kind of makes sense. I've read a few books on lucid dreaming. One was like this ex-NASA scientist, Albert Taylor, I think. And it was interesting. It made me want to do it, but I tried his suggestions and it never worked. So if I would, I could. Although I think I've heard Dr. Ray Peat, one of my greatest health mentors, who focuses only on evidence. So he doesn't make things up like a lot of people in the health world. He's kind of taught me how to think scientifically in a way where we're not, inventing things. And the only things that you write about are things that have been observed and repeated, which doesn't mean they're true, but it's as close as we can get to the truth. Anyways, so I've heard Dr. Ray Peat say that in ancient Chinese tradition, the idea of dreaming is actually related to stress. It's thought to be related to stress. So if that's the case, then maybe I don't want to dream. So I'm kind of on the fence about that. I could do some more research and maybe get an opinion on the matter.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I started a book on lucid dreaming this week from a past guest that we've had on the show that'll be released in a future episode. So just another synchro that kind of popped up.
Oh, interesting. I look forward to listening to that one.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
I think for me, the thing that kind of resets my brain is walking in a forest. I go to all kinds of trails around me. Pretty active in walking, finding conservation areas, and just forested areas in general. It's like when I walk in there, it really does feel like another world. I guess I don't think it's a coincidence that we're blanketed in EMFs and radio frequencies at all times. That has the impact of that is probably greater than we all know, because when you go into a forest, I feel like a weight has been lifted. I'm relaxed. And I think from my research, the radio frequencies, millimeter waves, electromagnetic frequencies, all these things seem to act on the body in the same way, and that is induce stress through nitric oxide and estrogen. So they have this estrogenic effect that triggers stress. So it makes sense then when you get out of that, when you're in the trees, it's kind of, you're blocked from it, which is why your cell phone reception goes down, which is a beautiful thing.
I've also seen some research by some Japanese scientists where they were measuring terpene levels and their ability to improve your immune system. So just things that plants are naturally emitting. And they found that it's actually in the 4 to 6 or 8 foot range that they naturally sit, which is where we walk and breathe in. So just walking through a forest is exposing you to these things to the point that part of what they'll recommend for people to do is to go walk into the woods or the forest, a couple of times a week, as addition to improve your immune system for conditions. And it makes sense. What have we done? We've removed ourselves from the environment and created a stressful one.
Man, that's interesting. So he's saying that we actually inhale terpenes from
the things
matter?
That the plants are naturally creating, because in the natural environment, if you have a caterpillar that starts eating a plant, it's releasing things into the air that are going downwind to warn the other plants. So yeah, there's lots of things that they naturally release. And yeah, you're breathing them in and it has an immunological response.
Wow, fascinating. I knew terpenes were in like cannabis and probably many other plants as well.
Yeah.
But I didn't know we were inhaling them when we were in there. That's
exactly. That's why a lot of times on like cannabis, people be like, oh, it's like a grapey or a purpley or a mint or a pine. And it's because they share similar terpenes with those plants. So when you smell pine, you're smelling terpenes, other things too, but that is, it's part of the smell.
Fascinating.
Yeah, just another part of the immune system that people don't consider, the actual molecules that you are inhaling and absorbing into your body and what that effect can even have. Anyway, sorry to sidetrack you on that question.
No, it's all good. I always appreciate new information.
What was the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Embarrassing. I don't know. When I think back to a lot of things, I kind of feel embarrassed. Just like, I don't know, for example, like a bachelor party where I would sing, do some karaoke or something. I kind of cringe a little bit. Another thing that comes to mind was, I think it was grade 7. I had this really nice Charlotte Hornets baseball cap, although that's a basketball team. But I had a cap on, and yeah, like a bird shit on my hat. And I remember my one buddy, Scotty, he's like, oh, bird shit on your hat, points to it. And all the other guys around me were laughing and pointing. And if that happened now, I wouldn't really feel that embarrassed. But when you're a kid, it's like everything's amplified, it seems. So that one has stuck with me as a pretty embarrassing moment. Pretty humbling experience that's kind of happening recently is I've joined this tennis club, started to play last year. I love tennis. It's the kind of exercise that I think is most beneficial because basically it's like short sprints, very like powerful movements, quick and not overly endurance. So that, which amounts to stress. So I think it's like a really healthy style of exercise. So I love it. And when I play, I'm playing in a league with like men that are from 45 to 60. And I'm 36 and I'm in really good shape physically. So I have this huge advantage physically over almost all the guys out there. And yet I still get my ass handed to me sometimes. And that's very humbling. And I love it because one, I like playing with people who are better than me. It's probably the quickest way to get better. And it's really humbling. And I like the fact that, you can't win just like I'm so much more physically capable of them. And yet I still lose. So it says there's a lot more to the game than just a physical component. So I find that humbling. And almost every week that happens, at least one of the matches anyways.
What is your greatest fear and how did you overcome it?
This one's kind of like an ongoing thing. I try not to fear anything, first of all. But if there is anything, it is living in the world that appears to be being created right now by like the mainstream, which is like people in cities stacked in high rises, no freedom of speech, no freedom of thought, no privacy. Everyone's the exact same. Everyone's detached from each other. And I think ultimately people are merged with the internet and their cell phones. And I think converted into something other than human. And I think that comes at a great cost, losing our souls and our connection to God and the Creator. So I think while I'm living, that is probably my biggest fear. And that explains why I live the way I do, because the way I live is basically to move away from that. And I think in order to avoid that kind of life, we need to learn how to produce the food that we need to survive and all the things that we need to survive in this world. And so I'm kind of moving towards that. I bought 15 acres of land and I'm about to build a house, an earthship style house, which the main building component is used tires rammed with earth. And they become like a 400-pound steel belted brick. And if you think of like an aquarium with a lizard in it or an iguana, they always sit on that rock, the heat rock, because it's thermally absorptive. So it's really warm. It holds that heat. And so if you could think of the Earthship house, the tire walls would absorb that heat during the day when it's hot. And then at night when the air temperature cools down, they release it. And the result is a house that remains 70 degrees interior temperature year round without heating or cooling. Now that's a beautiful thing, because living up in Canada where I live, it can get up to like, or down to like minus 30, which you would die very quickly being outside. So the fact that you can have a house where even if all the power fails, you can be inside and you're not going to freeze to death. I mean, that is a beautiful thing. So, and that's not the only thing. These things collect water off the roof into cisterns. They produce their own electricity with solar panels and maybe wind. And they reuse water 4 times. And so it's a really sustainable, resilient style house. That's one of the things. That's kind of step one, really. Then once I live in there, I'm going to learn to produce all my own food. And so all this relates to my greatest fear of not wanting to live in a certain way. And like I said, we got to get out there and create the solutions. If we create the solutions, then we can sustain humanity forever and have great lives. But ultimately, the systems that will support people who want to remain human must be created. So we got to get out there and do that, and not go to protest as much, and instead get out there and build the future, build an amazing, a better future. So that's my greatest fear and how I'm overcoming it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the use of the tires for wall. That seems like it would be an incredibly strong and thermally insulative structure. So, yeah,
I'm looking at the back of an earth house as we speak. I'm on the road. I'm not usually at this location, but down the road, rural Indiana is a cornfield, and then there's an earth house. I can see the little escape hatch hut that they have on top. So I know that there's been a few synchronicities so far, but like, what are the chances, right? So I had to mention that.
That's awesome, man. That's good to see. A lot of people seem to be moving in that direction.
Yeah, I've seen a couple for sale too, but it's just, I don't know, they're dark in there. You got to have some skylights or something.
Yeah, for sure. I think moisture is the other potential problem, which requires some good air exchange.
Yep, or really good natural lighting. I know that I've seen in skyscrapers before where they'll have lensing systems that transmit light into fiber optics that then can be traveled into structures and lensed out again. So, yeah, it'd be very cool to be able to light the interior of a place like that with natural light.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of the way I look at it, like if the pioneers could survive off grid, I mean, it's ridiculous if we can't. We have so much more that are available. Like we have all the technologies that we can use are so much greater than what they had, you know? So not only electricity production, but like even it would be a struggle making like a cistern back then. You'd have to like make it out of cement, and they definitely did. They did amazing things. But like I said, the tools and the technologies now,
and just
really
knowledge.
Now.
You can just go get a book, find an expert, take a course. It used to be, okay, what do you know and who do you know that knows something? Like the knowledge is not, it's self-created in your community.
Yeah, knowledge is everything. That's why I find YouTube so useful. You can watch someone do something that you want to do, and it's just like, okay, I got the confidence now. It's so much better even than reading a book, I find.
Completely agree. What is your single greatest driving force in life, and how do you further it?
Well, this actually kind of ties into the last question. I have 2 primary motivating forces that are the wind at my sails. Besides God, that's the number one. But for me, the thing that really motivates me, one, it's the fear of living in a way that I don't want to live, which I just described in full. And the other one is the love of the life that I do want to live. I want to live on God's creation in a way that I think God intended for me to live, you know, as steward of the land, doing it in a way where I'm actually improving the land season to season. You can watch the beneficial changes. And I think that will just feel incredible inside to know that like my efforts are making this more beautiful, more resilient and healthier. It's attracting more wildlife. I got hundreds of apple trees now, and they're feeding all kinds of deer. I don't even need to like leave the property if I want to hunt and to harvest a deer for my family, which will feed them for an entire year. Like it's such a beautiful thing. More species of birds will come on. I think that will be one of the pleasures of life that not a lot of people think about. You know, when you improve the ecosystem, you get more wildlife, more diversity of plant and animal life. And I really look forward to that. So those are the two driving forces, the love of that and the fear of what I don't want. Those two, I think if we utilize those forces, I don't think we can be stopped from achieving our goals.
No, that's beautiful. I like it. It's how you move in the world. So you can provide for your entire family as long as you move and structure and, work with the land in a certain way over time and look and listen to it. So it's essentially, it's a job. It's what you do in society. It's how we all make a living now, but you could just do that with nature and still have, a result that's beneficial for everybody, like a non-toxic environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the biggest and most dangerous lies that we're told in this world is this idea that humans are inherently destructive. This idea that, we're destroying the world and that's the only possible way that we can live. We have to. There's no other way for humans to survive without being destructive. And it's simply not true. We know from the concept of permaculture, for example, there's lots and lots of people doing it already, producing food in ways that benefit the environment. And mainly it comes down to, from my research, using perennials as our staple food crops. So instead of like planting massive fields of corn, which requires us to like strip the entire field of its ground cover and then and spend thousands of dollars every season to plant those and get loans on massive and highly expensive machines to plant them and to harvest whatever's on that field with monocrops and then spray them with poisons and destroy the environment. We can do it in ways where that regenerates. If somebody has a field like that, you start by simply planting a mile-long row of trees that will eventually bear fruit or nuts. So there's your diversity in not only plants, but also in profits, because in 10 years, you'll have amazing walnuts to sell, abundance of nuts. And then you plant another row, and you can still grow your monocrops in between those trees. It's called agroforestry. But this is a good way to transition. There's a lot of people doing it. I'm going to start off right off the bat by doing that and then run like a leader-follower system of animals like cows, pigs, sheep, and birds through that to eat the grass and excrete on the grass, which is fertilizer. And the whole thing is just going to I can't wait to watch it.
Oh, I love that. Doing your own nuts is great too, because then you have, a storable, food source season to season should emergency hit. You've at least got a nice, natural, healthy source of fats.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think of like wheat crops, I mean, if you get a drought, not enough water or too much water, like the whole thing can be destroyed. It's like extremely fragile, And if you plant trees, like you plant it once, and it'll give you like food for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And if you plant perennial other things as well, like raspberries, blueberries, every kind of nut, pine nuts, walnuts, you name it. These things only need to be planted once. They don't strip the soil, and it creates habitat for animals instead of destroying it. And if we replace, for example, wheat with nut flowers, then we've got a sustainable food system. So this is the kind of thing I'm moving towards, creating perennial food crops. First for myself, I got to learn to.
No, that's amazing. And then all you have to do is keep doing natural fertilizers, which you can then, take out having to do just mass nitrogen injection and all these other crazy things they do.
Yeah, you got it. So like fish emulsion, like blended fermented fish mixed in water and then filtered. That's like one of the best fertilizers, I think.
Well, and what's beautiful, I've heard this it was a documentary I was watching somewhere, but it was on outdoor cannabis grows where guys would, after like 10 years of cultivating the plants in the soil, be able to walk away from it where they no longer needed fertilizer because it was self-sustaining in the wild where it was just naturally getting its nutrients. So they didn't need to do anything else. The natural foliage around provided. So I imagine, with like nut trees and stuff, yeah, you could certainly create an environment with that permaculture and other plants that very little would be needed, that, probably the animals and birds and everything else would bring that diversity in for you of nutrients. That's absolutely. I never even thought about starting with nut trees. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of a long-term investment because it takes, I don't know how long, but for different nuts, it takes a bit longer, maybe 5 to 10 years though before they start producing. So long-term investment, but I mean, it's something you could pass on to your children.
No, I love this
because increases in value.
Yeah, I've always said this about, like, it bothers me that in cities we have homeless problems and need, to give out food, when all we need to do is in every single park just start planting, plants that you can eat along the roadsides, things like that, edibles that are just there. Like, why aren't we utilizing, nature?
No, I know, right? That's so frustrating to me. I at one point, probably 5 years ago, at my dad's house, I bought it was around $1,000 of fruit trees and other perennial food-bearing plants, like berries and things. And I planted it. There's like this train track right beside his house, and I noticed the soil there was like all worm casting. It was really rich, and so I'm like, all right, I'm
Nice.
going to buy all these fruit trees and I'm going to plant them, and just for the sake of doing the right thing. We need food. We all need food. It's insane not to use our spaces to grow it. So I had this idea. I bought all this stuff, hauled it down there, planted it, and long story short, like within a month's time, every single plant was dead. People killed every single one of them.
Man, I wonder why. Was it just like overpicking and plucking and touching, or a somebody had a problem with the plant?
That's a good question. I think it was the people on that worked at the train place. Basically,
Oh, that
those
would make
cars.
sense because they'd go, yeah, we don't want, vagrants or whoever to populate here.
Yeah, but it's still insane. You know what I mean? Like, I think they, those, I forget what they're called, but it's kind of like a plastic thing that you wrap around the base of a tree to prevent like bunnies from eating the bark and killing it. So I had those on the trees, and they basically just took those off, and all of a
Oh,
sudden,
yeah.
bunnies ate it and it destroyed it. Everything died. So I was like, it's so frustrating. You just try to do the right thing in this world, and it's like every decision that's made in this world is like completely backwards of what makes sense.
Who were and or are your role models and why?
One of my biggest role models for health research and the way I think, which I think is very unique. And I wish everyone thought this way, because then if somebody thought differently than you wouldn't fight about it. You'd be happy to hear new ideas. Um, and so Dr. Raymond Pete, he's a health researcher. Yeah, I think he's getting up there now. He might be around 80 years old. The guy's incredible. For his entire life, um, he has a background in like physiology and biology, but his entire life he's been like researching evidence-based, like truly scientific, which is very rare in this world. And so he doesn't make things up. If he has an idea, it's because there's a reason for it, and that was somebody observed this and somebody repeated this and demonstrated it over and over and over, the scientific method basically. And that's as close to the truth as we can get. And he's always stayed true to that. And it's beautiful because his concepts about what's healthy and what isn't are extremely different than the mainstream. In fact, they're almost always in direct opposition. And because of the fact that they'll never be popular, because he has elements that would make like a vegan mad, but he also has elements that would make somebody who eats like a paleo diet mad, like the meat eaters. So it's not pleasing people. It'll never be popular. And I think that alone says that it might be right. I forget who said it. There's a quote like, everything popular is wrong. I think that's true. So anyways, as far as thinking goes, Ray Pete kind of turned me on to the idea of evidence only. The idea that I need to give like a specific example here. So for example, a lot of research is being done on specific diseases right now. So heart disease, diabetes, each one representing its own line of research. Cancer, obesity, on and on and on. And one of the things that my research I've come to conclude is that, or one of the things I see when I read the research and the literature, is that these lines of research are all coming to the same conclusion, and that is all these diseases are about an energetic deficiency. They're metabolic disorders. There's a disruption in the body's energy supply or its ability to efficiently produce energy. So this is a beautiful thing. This is something we're seeing over and over again. The chances of it being true are extremely high. And so Ray Pete has kind of figured this out decades ago. The guy's still like 100 years ahead of his time. But yeah, I really appreciate him. He's one of my role models for that. He's changed the way I think, and I think it's a very effective and important way. And I would say another role model is my father. I've never heard him complain once. And he's no stranger to hard work. He started his own business when my mother was pregnant with my sister, who's 1 year older than me. I think he realized, I got a baby on the way. He was a manager at a sporting goods store at the time. And he's like, this is not going to provide the life that I want to provide for my family. So he risked everything, got a huge loan, and started his own business and started working like 15, 16-hour days. So this guy knows how to work hard. And I never heard him complain once. Instead of complaining, he got to work to change things. And I think that passed that on to me. That's one thing I'm very thankful for my father. And so for that, he's my role model on my work ethic. And the way I think is modeled on, I would say, Ray Peat. And he's my greatest influence in the mind and how I go through the world.
That's interesting that it's all related to energy loss. Do you think that's, things in the environment, all the magnetic fields, radio waves, a radar, all those things pulsating in on top of us? Or do you think it could also be related to like larger environmental factors like long, term solar influxes and, galactic energy coming through?
I think it's mostly environmental toxins in the form of chemicals in food, water, and air, but also radiation, like you mentioned as well. These things are very effective disruptors of the metabolism within cells. And as far as diet goes, contrary to what a lot of people say, a lot of people think like they say sugar is the biggest change in the modern diet over the past 100 years. But when you look into the grocery store, you see around like 95% of things are made of corn. So it's like, yes, people have started eating more sugar, but by and large, it's kind of obvious. The thing that we're eating more of is the corn oils. It's the unsaturated liquid vegetable oils. And this, from my research, and a lot of people still don't even know this. I think I might write my next book on this. But the polyunsaturated fats, these are the ones that the government says are essential. From my research onto cancer, I've concluded the only thing they're essential for is tumor formation. And they seem to be the most anti-metabolic substances in all of nature. Literally in proportion to our consumption of these fats do we age and degenerate. And you can call it whatever disease you want, but it's the same phenomenon, the breakdown of metabolism.
This is corn oil that does this?
Yeah, so there were some studies around like starting 1935 where they basically fed rats their mouse chow in addition to various types of oils. So they would use like a fish oil, like Manhattan oil in particular, corn oil versus a more saturated one like coconut oil. And so they determined there that to the extent that the fats you consume are unsaturated, the unsaturated fats are far more tumorigenic or cancer promoting than the saturated ones. The coconut oils, the butters, beef fat, lamb fat, chocolate fat, these are the highly saturated ones. These are protective against tumors, whereas the unsaturated ones, they're very unstable molecules, basically a free radical liquid that creates like a chain reaction of free radical damage, and that turns on stress. And the breakdown products of these fats, particular prostaglandins, these things inhibit the body's ability to switch that stress off. So disease and degeneration and aging happen when the body is unable to turn that stress off and it becomes chronic. So you have that stress metabolism happening at all times. So the solution basically to all diseases, which is my goal, to end all of them, hence the endalldisease.com, is to decrease your consumption of the unsaturated fats and increase your consumption of the saturated fats. So basically, I'm really not picky with the way to eat. I think all diets make people sicker from everything I've seen and tried myself. So I like to say, eat whatever you want, eat lots. I think the biggest problem is people don't eat enough. But the only thing that I would say to be particular about, and you don't have to go overboard, I still eat fries, cooked in corn oil now and then, but basically just switch the fats you cook with from liquid vegetable oils to an oil that's more solid at room temperature, like a brick of butter or coconut oil. If you switch your fats to just butter and coconut oil that you cook with, that should be enough to really give you a good life and maintain a good level of health, basically.
Ooh, so liquid oil is off the list.
Yeah. I haven't used like olive oil or corn oil. I don't know if corn oil.
I do a lot of olive oil.
I use butter or coconut oil, and I use coconut oil for oil pulling, like in my mouth too. But like, man, cook everything with butter. If it says oil in the recipe, just use butter, and it'll taste like at least a little bit better, if not.
There you go. I love butter too.
Yeah.
I have an odd question. My fiance is on dialysis, so massive amounts of butter, coconut are off the list. Are there any other oils that would be good? We've been doing olive oil because we thought that was a good one.
Well, olive oil is the in-between. It's a monounsaturated fat. I think it's around 12% unsaturated. So I think that's for every 100 grams you eat, you're getting 12 grams. So it's not something you want to eat a lot of, but I would say, yeah, it's relatively safe. However, I read a book by this guy. I'm trying to think of his name. He wrote a book called Never Be Sick Again. It was Raymond Francis. Dr. Raymond Francis wrote a book, and he exposed apparently like the olive oil industry. I guess they're allowed to put like up to 50%. They're allowed to basically cut olive oils that are imported with at least 50% of other oils. So it's like, okay, they're going to make it. They're obviously going to use, the cheap vegetable oils. So I don't know. If you can get pure olive oil, it's relatively safe, but I don't think you'd want to eat more than, a couple tablespoons a day. So it's not something you want to consume a ton of, but it is relatively safe.
And then especially like when you cook with it, like some of that evaporates off too, right? So it's not like you're taking a spoonful of olive oil and, ingesting it. It's mixed in there with other things, right?
I think so. Even I don't know if it's evaporated off.
I guess if you had to use it for cooking, it's not too bad. Just don't use it. Don't cook too much with it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't like to tell people what to eat. It's weird. There's too many people doing that. But yeah, I mean, I would say, I guess for me, it's like I just try not to go overboard on it. Little bit's all good. A lot's might not be the best.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with you that the whole diet, like the diets hurt people. It's more, even the word diet, like gives you the wrong impression. It's not, a set time and you're only eating whatever XYZ to live a healthy lifestyle. You have to change your lifestyle. It is a lifestyle change. It's not diet or a fad or anything.
Exactly, man. I think you hit the nail on the head. Like this is what I've noticed more than anything when people are sick. It's that they're not eating enough because they're like restricting all kinds of things and trying to do the right thing. Like the reality is like the harder you try to eat right, in quotes, the more damage you seem to do. And I did this. I went through every single diet. I think a lot of people did and are doing this right now. They jump from one fad diet to the next, trying to find the perfect diet or way to eat. But the reality is like the base material from which your body, this is actually building on the concept that I mentioned before, that like metabolism is number one. If you have a high metabolism, your body runs better. For example, the naked mole rat has a really high metabolism in its natural environment, which is completely subterranean its entire life. And it's immune to cancer in that natural environment. It can withstand 30 minutes without oxygen, without incurring brain damage in that environment. It doesn't feel pain when being burnt with acid, and it lives 15 times longer than other rats. So a high metabolism is king. So when you apply that to diet, which I have yet to do in my work, but that'll be a future book, the question is what impact do different foods have on your metabolism? And there's macronutrients, your protein, carbs, and fats, and there's micronutrients, your vitamins and minerals. The most important thing are your proteins and carbs and fats because those represent your calories. How can your body make a lot of energy, which is the definition of a high metabolism, if you don't eat a lot of energy? And that's the problem. If you think of most vegetables, think of like a leaf, think of cauliflower, broccoli, tomato, cucumber. These have almost no protein, almost no carbs, almost no fat. There's literally no energy. How can you have a high metabolic rate if you're eating only these things? And the answer is you can't, which is why potatoes, which have a really high quality protein and carbs, if someone's going to eat vegan, which I'm not convinced is healthy or even possible to reproduce at this point, although I hope that it is because I don't want to eat animals. I love them. But if anyone's going to eat that way, I think potatoes are, without a doubt, the most important food for a vegan. And so, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I see. Most people are starving themselves, thinking they're doing the right things. And I think that's like the purpose of this culture. That's what it wants. It wants us to all become disordered eaters by restricting all kinds of foods. So the answer then is to eat a lot. For example, like when I wake up in the morning, now I just started this new thing ever since I a carrot cake. I have a piece of carrot cake as soon as I wake up. It's been known for a long time that the most common time for heart attacks is in the morning, which tells you that is the time of the greatest stress. And the reason why is because you're not eating for like 8 or 9 hours. So to switch that stress off, you need a lot of calories for your body to produce energy. And so something that's very calorie dense, like a dry cake with lots of sugar and carbohydrates, ideally some salt and saturated fat would make it even better. That's a really effective way to switch off the stress and improve your metabolic rate at the time when it is at its lowest. So the idea, when you look up like eating disorders, anorexia, for example, one of the behaviors of people with that is to categorize food or to move all foods into two categories, good or bad, healthy or not healthy. This is a thing I think we need to move away from. What I'm saying is, if a food increases your metabolism, your metabolic rate, like that carrot cake, then it is healthy. So it's like, how could a piece of cake be healthy? That's the switch that people need to make in their minds and stop thinking of food as good or bad. We need to think of it in terms as its effects on our metabolism. If it makes you warm and energized, that's a sign it's improving your metabolic rate. And this can be quantified by measuring your temperature and pulse.
That's amazing, because I just recently dove into the world of baking, and carrot cakes are one of the things I'm working on. So I'm going to have some carrot cake for breakfast.
Beautiful.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, if you, one of the most effective ways to, I guess, determine your overall metabolic rate is your temperature and pulse. And especially in the morning, like I said, that's the most stressful time of day. So if you wake up and your temperature is like 98 or above, and your pulse is from 70 to 85, that's indicative that you're not under stress and that your body's manufacturing energy using your thyroid hormone with oxygen. And so, yeah, I think if you do that and then you measure after your carrot cake in the morning, you'll find that your temperature goes up. So there's a little test you can do.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. I'll report back with my findings when I get a chance.
What quality do you most admire in a woman?
That's a good question. I have a new girlfriend now. We've been dating for just over 2 months now. And I've noticed some things in her that I really do admire. And I like to use the analogy of like building an earthship. It's applicable. And I can talk about earthships because I'm building one. And it's a good analogy. So here we go. I think like the masculine energy in this world is here to kind of create systems. So as far as the earthship is concerned, developing, there is the water catchment systems, water purification. And then there is like the sewage treatment. And there is the electrical system, on and on. So that would be kind of the masculine's energy. And the woman's energy, once this is all created, like it looks like hell. Like, so the woman comes in, and that's when she creates and makes it beautiful. So I've noticed that in my girlfriend, that it's like, while I'm more focused on the systems and getting the things created, not only for the earthship, but as a metaphor for the entire world, like the farm. So you create an aquaponic system that feeds everyone else. She seemed to be more focused on the aesthetics, making things beautiful, and she's very skilled at it. And another thing she's skilled at is like community. So who are you going to sell that fish to? Who are you going to sell those strawberries to? And she seems to be so good at like not only meeting people, but creating the connections in the community that are also unbelievably necessary. If you create all the systems, you create the farm, and you have no one to sell to, what's the point, right? So I think God made man, God made woman, and it's a really beautiful thing when we work together. We're so complementary. If we ignore what this world says, that men and women are identical in every way, and embrace our differences and work together, we can do amazing things. And I'm really, really thankful for the woman I've found, because we complement each other quite well.
Yeah, it's engineering and architecture. You'll never get the Sistine Chapel if you only have one or the other. You need them both to create this outstanding thing of longevity that looks beautiful and means so much. Like there's substance behind it. So yeah, I like that having those different energies interacting and viewing the world from different angles kind of really creates a space in between, a third reality that's even better. What is the most courageous thing you have ever done or seen in your life?
The most courageous thing. For me, the things that I've done, I would say it's writing my book on cancer. When I was writing it, like I was working a limousine job. I remember like telling people about it. Um, and it was awesome because everyone kind of resonated with that and they saw the need for it. They found it was interesting. Um, but one of the things people said was like, "Oh, careful, careful," they implying that they might kill you or something if you do that. But it's like, no, it's like I'm not afraid to die for this. In fact, this world's so crazy. Sometimes I'd be happy to die, and I get jealous of like older people when they die. But at the same time, I'm thankful for every moment and day that I have. But it won't be a sad moment when I leave here. I'll tell you that. Um, so I think for me, that's where the courage comes from. And just taking on a massive project like that of trying to solve the disease of cancer, that's the most courageous thing I've done for sure. Although building an Earthship when I have no building experience, I mean, I think this is also an exercise in courage as well. And as far as other people go, there seems to be kind of a lack of people doing courageous things. Perhaps there isn't, and I just am not looking enough. But in my research into cancer, there's definitely a lot of doctors who exercise courage because they're doctors and they're speaking out against the industry itself. I mean, that's incredible. Like they're part of the club and they're speaking out against it. And I think a lot of them, seem to pay the price for that. Like with whether it's like defamation or death. So that for me is the ultimate. There's a lot of amazing, amazing doctors saying things like, we have a multi-billion-dollar industry that is killing people right and left just for financial gain. And that would be Dr. Glenn Warner. Or my favorite, Dr. Reich Gerd Hamer, German physician. He said, to sell chemotherapy as a therapy is most likely the biggest deceit in the history of medicine. Whoever masterminded this chemo torture deserves a monument in hell. For me, that's the ultimate. These guys are all heroes. These men and women, doctors and scientists speaking out. I love it. That fuels me. That gives me energy. And I think they deserve a thank you.
Yeah, it's if there ever was a time for courage, it seems that now would be that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And God bless everyone doing that, including you guys, having people on here, getting me to think deep questions like this. It's improving me, and that's going to, in turn, hopefully reflect in my work and hopefully influence other people. So, I mean, it's a win-win.
Well, and we're living in a beautiful time of communication where, you don't just have to control a few printing presses or, lines of information that are verifiable from, who knows source. Like now we have access to the information. It's still available. It's getting flagged or, periodically removed, but people can still find out. Everybody knows someone at this point that, is on the fence. So I don't know. I find it fascinating that although we're living in some pretty oppressive times where the technology is, kind of forcing a large majority of people in a certain direction, at the same time, it's giving us an ability to communicate that we've never had before. So we still have a leg up in knowing what's going on as were before. I mean, if those pipelines got shut down, it was telephone communication or, like telephone, like person to person. You didn't have that. I can talk to anybody in the world and share, all of the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a beautiful thing. But at the same time, I find on the other end of the spectrum, it's like there's so much out there now. It's like diluted.
Yeah,
so
and the water's
like,
purposely muddied too. So, but it's there at least, as before it would be a vacuum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if you didn't know the right
I heard
guy.
Bill Burr say before, he was like, it's rare that there's like a worldwide event where all eyes are watching now, becoming more rare and rare as we move forward.
Yeah, that's true. I think you can definitely see that. And I love to look at just the television industry, and specifically if you look at like cartoons, there's no really well drawn hand animated, Saturday morning cartoons like there used to be, because there wasn't so many eyes on one channel of information. So before you could get 30 million viewers and, this on one channel regularly every Saturday morning and have the money to fund a really high quality product as we're now. No, it's got to be on the fly and cheap because you're only getting in the millions of viewers. And So that is also another beautiful thing that, we're also getting a more diversity of information. Even if it's bad, the mainstream has lost its foothold. So, I guess if our minds are being polluted, at least they're being polluted in different flavors that probably less controllable.
Yeah, and the people who really want the information, it's like they will find it. So that is a beautiful thing.
What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
For me, being a man that's a tough question. There's so many different ideas about that right now. But for me, I would say to be a man is to live in a way uncompromising with your ethics and morals, for one. And I think that will, in many ways, result in having your own business. Because if you're working for someone else, you might have to compromise on something, especially today. And not only that, but putting most of your time into solving problems. To solve a problem is to protect women and children, which is like a traditional way of looking at a man's role in this world. And I think that's still applicable. Just doing like the right thing and not being okay with the possibility of being lied to. I don't know, like seeking truth, having like a high level of integrity. So like basically when I go to parties and things, I'm just thinking of the past. It's been a while since I partied, especially with COVID and things. It's hard to get around people these days, but I'm thinking of the past, like just to on one end of the thing, like a small situation where I exercise integrity, where I see a lot of people not. I was talking to a buddy at the party and we were just talking about like wrestling. He was at the wrestling team in high school. I wasn't, but I'm interested in it now. I think that's a really useful skill to have. So I was like, all right, we should look around, see if there's any kind of wrestling team going on, and we'll see if we can join this and start practicing. And he agreed. He was passionate about it. And a lot of people talk about things when they're drunk passionately, and then they never do it. The next day it's like it never happened, and they don't follow up. Well, the next day I followed up. I was hungover, but I still looked it up, see if there was like a wrestling meetup. And sure enough, there was. I reached out to him and I let him know. Here it is. We talked about this last night, and I'm following up with you. I found this, and he actually wrote back. He like appreciated. I suspect he didn't expect a response because most people don't. They don't have that integrity. So that's just like a really small example, small situation of integrity. And then like the other one, a large on the opposite end of the spectrum would be like doing what you say you're going to do for like a business. If you have a dream, you don't just start that project, you start it and then you finish it, like writing a book, for example. So from the smallest scale to the largest, I think that might be one of the biggest qualities of what it means to be a man, living with integrity and doing things that solve problems.
Well, Mark, that was the 13 questions. You have a moment to do a few bonus questions?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Sweet. Bill, you got any picked out?
Yeah, I've got two in mind. One of them is as a guest that was submitted to us from a past guest, Carpo. Forget the episode number, but that question is: if you could give one sentence of advice to future generations, what would it be?
Man, that's a tough one. One sentence advice to future generations. I would say question everything. It's kind of cliche. George Carlin is pretty famous for saying that. And a lot of people who don't question everything will even say that that's a good idea. So I wish there was a better way to convey that. Question everything, especially if it's popular. Maybe that would be my one sentence.
It's a solid piece of advice. Always seek new information, like you were saying. New information is good.
Reaffirming that X-Files did in fact teach me very good life skills.
Right. And then, I guess the only other one that really comes to mind is, what do you hope, what do you hope people would say at your funeral?
Good question. I almost feel like I just want to be like, bury my bones, just forget about me. Maybe I don't feel I deserve a funeral or something. I want people to not cry, for one. like I said, it's going to be amazing when I leave this place. This world's such a monster. I feel like I'm living inside a monster. It'll be great. It'll be a relief. Imagine how peaceful it will be to be laying in the ground. But that being said, I don't know. I really don't care because that's like, it's almost asking me to like think what people think of me. What do I want people to think of me? And it's like I try not to care. I just want to live and do what I think is right and not care what anyone thinks. Obviously, if I'm building an airship, I don't care what people think. I'm not afraid to think differently. So I don't know. It'd be cool if they said, he got better as life went on at showing his love for friends and family. That's something I'm working on. It's funny, like I just started attending an Orthodox church, Orthodox Christianity, which is a very interesting concept. I grew up Catholic and I always hated it. I hated the idea of God. And it's like, how did I not even? And then I like for a while there, I was Protestant. And then I'm like, okay. And then I found this concept of Orthodox Christianity. And I'm like, how did I not even know about this? Honestly, I bet you almost no Catholics, no Protestants even know about Orthodox Christianity. It's like the original church. Anyways, I'm sorry. What was your original question? I want to link this together.
It was, what do you hope people will say at your funeral?
It's hilarious that I get off on this tangent. No, yeah, it's like, it's amazing when I go in there. It's like, no matter, there are people there with all kinds of skin colors, all backgrounds, ages, sexes, races, and it doesn't matter. It's like, we're all united in there under God. And it's like, I'm having to get used to this feeling of people loving me. When in reality, like when you're outside the walls of that church, it's like everyone hates you. People don't even give a rat's ass about you. That's just this world, and it's just completely different. So I'm learning to be comfortable in that. I'm learning to love, and that's what I hope. I hope people notice that I'm getting better at loving as life goes on.
That's amazing. I have to mention that I like your attitude about dying too, because it seems to be that you have a positive, kind of a more positive aspect on it. Like it's not a bad thing. And just going back to the whole fear porn versus hope porn thing, I think that death in today's culture, the way that it's portrayed by the powers that be, is such a negative thing, when in reality, death is a part of life. And if you know that there is continuation of life of some sort after that transition, which from talking to you, I'm pretty sure you're in that boat, that that doesn't have to be a bad and sad thing, although oftentimes it is, because we're going to miss those people. But just to understand that, not to be afraid of it so much as we're told to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think only if we're afraid of death are we afraid of something like COVID or something, So I think that's essential, that they make death such this monstrous and scary thing. It has to be the foundation of control, because if you're afraid of death, then you're afraid of dying, and then you can be manipulated in various ways. So yeah, I think the way that this world and society and the world culture, if you will, the way they portray death is of something that's scary. It's kind of like narcissistic. Well, the whole evolutionary idea that we evolved from like a sea sponge, that kind of implies that it's like purposeless and that this is all there is. And if this is all there is, then that is a scary thing. So that's kind of why that whole mindset is upheld, I guess, and promoted by the culture to keep us so afraid of death, so that we, at the end of the day, can be manipulated and controlled.
Yeah, it's a tool they use for division, just like, racism or, you name it.
Yeah, and being at peace with that, it is a really good thing. I look forward to it. It's going to be like such a relaxing thing. I don't have to shower and cook and eat every day. Oh, it's going to be awesome. And then I get to find out if there's a creator, and hopefully maybe be with my mom and my dead bunny and my papa and everyone else. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I was thinking about death recently just because of what's going on in my life. And I was contemplating if there are emotions after we cross over, because that in itself would be a relief, not having to deal with, stress, anxiety, depression, like all that stuff goes out the window from what I can tell. And It is people that have had near death experiences. I mean, those are often positive feelings associated with being, loving feelings on the other side. So, yeah, just looking at it from that point of view is something that crossed my mind. Not having to deal with, the daily stresses and whatnot of everyday life. So, if you look at it like that, I think it helps a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that is the last bonus question, I think. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and for coming on and sharing some personal stories and viewpoints.
It's my pleasure. It's about 85 degrees at my house. I can't wait to hop in the shower after this.
In the Earthship, right?
No, I'm just in a rental house right now while I build that thing.
Right. Well, good luck with that. And I'll be in touch with you to let you know about the release date, and I'll definitely be leaving a testimonial on your website with my experience with your red light. So
awesome. Sounds good. I'll send you a link to that, and if you can send me a link to the show, I will send that out to my list for you.
Yep, for sure. I will do that. And then I guess, is there any last thoughts or anything you want the listeners to know, or just impressions on the show in general, etc.?
Yeah, maybe just where the listeners could get a hold of my work and read more if they're interested. My website's endalldisease.com. And if you sign up on the main page, second row down, you will get 3 free ebooks. One is a chapter from my first book, The Cancer Industry, the scientific review of chemotherapy, medicine, or murder. And the second book is on sodium bicarbonate as a treatment for cancer and other diseases. And the third book is a red light therapy dose guide, which shows you, derived directly from scientific evidence, some of the treatment times and doses that have been found to be effective.
That's amazing. Listener, check it out. It's well worth your time. And yeah, I guess that wraps this one up. Adam, do you?
No, I just want to thank you, Mark, so much for joining us. It's been very enlightening. Really look forward to getting your books, and thank you so much for spending your time with us. It's the most important thing that you could give, and we truly thank you for that.
Thank you for having me on, and thanks for doing the show.
I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what?
Why is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why? I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians, and use labels? Now that's racism.
I don't want no Hawaii.
Why?
I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't want no Hawaii.
Why?
I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't want no Hawaii.
Why?
I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't want no Hawaii.
Why?
I don't want no Hawaii. Yo,
Why is
why?
there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. The night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though
Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii, yo what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii, yo what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii, yo what?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.